So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need the resolve to resist. Hey, thanks for watching our live stream. I'm the host, David Creighton. In the meantime, have a look at some of these clips and take the opportunity, please, to like this broadcast, ring the bell, or subscribe.
And we're stepping up in every way we can because we know that Russia must win this war. That Ukraine must win this war.
But freedom is something you earn every day.
I don't know that the government currently has fiscal anchors.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist. Happy Thanksgiving Monday. This is David Creighton broadcasting to you live from the Ottawa area. Hope you're having a great long weekend. Yeah, we have to continue to work though. There's always dangers on the horizon. When we come back, we're going to be talking about how the CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, is so out of step with the United States and increasingly even United Nations policy. But we'll talk about that and a lot of other things this morning. Thanks for joining me.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
So, what's happening? Well, there's an incredible story at a Powell River, which I have to credit some other folks for doing that. Saw it actually in Moose on the Loose. I think it was this morning. And whenever he does something that is commendable, I always say so. And this is a great story. It's about 3 weeks old because everybody missed this story. Before I get into the latest update on the ostriches and what the CFIA is up to, I believe is up to, I want to have a look at this story because this is a bombshell in a real sense. That's one of the most overused phrases on the internet or in news. But look at this. This is CBC. Independent producers plan to export power to the U.S. for 30 years. 30 years. This is a 30-year contract opposed in Powell River. Now, I grew up across the shall we say, the inlet, I grew up in Comox. And yeah, there used to be a pulp and paper mill in Powell River. You could smell it, of course, from Comox. It was not that. It was only about an hour ferry drive right across there, and you could see the smoke in the distance from the shores near 19 Wing Comox, the Air Force Base where I worked and grew up near. But this is an incredible story because guess who is selling this energy to the United States? Yeah, of course, they've got a dummy corporation here, as always. But it's Brookfield. Brookfield is behind this. A group of residents in a local First Nation on BC's Sunshine Coast are trying to put a stop to a proposed exclusive 30-year deal between an independent hydropower producer, that's Brookfield, and a U.S. company. Two dams in the area, Powell Lake and Lois Lake, about 125 and 100 kilometers northeast of Vancouver, respectively, are operated by Powell River Energy Incorporated, a subsidiary, see it, of Brookfield Renewable. That's Mark Carney. Do you believe this? The company has applied to the Canadian Energy Regulator, to export the power from its Powell River sites to U.S.-based company BR Pacific Hydro, an affiliate of PREI. It's transnational, it's cross-border, and it's all equals Brookfield. Now, some of the local residents are saying, even before it clicked, that this is another Mark Carney grab. This guy is just so incredibly vulgar in his fiscal skullduggery. I don't know what else to call it. But he's just so blatant. He doesn't think anybody should be complaining about this. But yeah, some of the people are saying we need that power for local economic development now that our mill has been closed, said Ellen Gould, president of Powell River-based Energy Democracy for BC. Powell River was founded because of the hydropower here. And so for it to be locked away into export for 30 years is pretty devastating. Yeah, how would you like it if your community sold all of its power for 30 years to the United States or to anybody or to China? Or this goes to show you, I'm sorry. No, I'm not. I don't apologize for saying this. But this goes to show you how amoral the liberal government is. Always going on about elbows up. Well, not as much anymore. But they were always going on, but elbows up, and the U.S. is a existential threat, and Donald Trump is an existential threat, except, of course, in Mark Carney sitting in the same room as Donald Trump. Then he's a transformational president and Mark Carney's best friend. Well, apparently, Mark Carney really doesn't give a damn about elbows up for Canada as far as energy resources go. Brookfield wants a 30-year contract here. And like I said, this is not something that most Canadians are even aware of. This story has been submerged. Where's the local MP? I know I've got viewers who hail from the Sunshine Coast area. And were you aware of what's going on here? Because like I said, I grew up on Vancouver Island. I know Powell River very well. It was a short ferry hop from where I lived. And I didn't know this pulp and paper mill had shut down a couple of years back, but I certainly didn't know about this deal. This is just astounding that they can get away with this. So, I want to show you a couple of other things, and this is big news. Farm policy news: Trump admin is shifting away from depopulation for bird flu. So you know how the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, likes to tell you that they're only interested in doing this killing of God knows how many ostriches are left. We started with 399. We have no idea how many birds are left. We know the CFIA has been up to no good. We know that they've been mistreating the birds. We know there's been animal cruelty going on. We cannot substantiate whether or not any more birds have been killed or escaped or whatever. But Katie Pesitne, spokeswoman for the farm, has told me repeatedly she believes a, quote, substantial, unquote, number of birds are missing. I would say that's probably because they're being killed in an unofficial call. This is why this farm cannot rest. But here's what this article says. Trump administration is preparing a plan for combating avian flu that will move away from depopulating entire infected flocks and rely instead on biosecurity and medication to contain outbreaks, says President Donald Trump's top economic advisor. He said on CBS's Face the Nation Sunday that he has been working on the plan with Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins and all the best people in government, including academics around the country and around the world, Brasher reported. USDA has for years been requiring the depopulation of infected flocks to control the spread of the virus, a requirement that has been skyrocketing. So where are we with this? Looks like this common sense is going to prevail in the United States. So why are we continuing on this crazy, idiotic path? I want to show you a few more articles, because this is incredible. Right here. Hey, look at this. Biden's decision to kill 166 million chickens just before leaving office, combined with California and Arizona's mandates for exclusively cage-free egg production, has caused prices to skyrocket, up 64% over the course of Biden's presidency. Look at that. Robert W. Malone shared this on his X page. The more they test, the more avian influenza they will find. 1 million chickens killed in Ohio this week because 1 million tested positive. Let it be your New Year's resolution. Buy some sex-linked pullets or chicks and produce your own eggs. It takes about 3 hens. Not a lot of space or mess. If you can't have chicken, find a local farmer who doesn't register their product or chickens. Think about a chicken tractor to fertilize your land at the same time. So this has been epidemic. Frank Luntz, the pollster, said the average cost of eggs is now significantly cheaper than in recent days. A dozen eggs were $5.51 on Tuesday, more than $2 cheaper than an all-time high of $8.17 earlier this month. Why? Because Donald Trump has decided to change course. A cruel way, this is the New York Times, a cruel way to control bird flu? Poultry giants call and cash in. Big poultry farms have received millions of dollars for their losses. Animal welfare groups contend that aid reinforces inhumane culling of birds exposed to the virus. So and this is something Katie has been talking about from the farm. She's been saying big poultry's making money off of these culls. They want these because they're getting money. But you are the one who ends up holding the bag. You're the one who ends up paying more for poultry products and eggs because these people are completely out of control. Now, here's a great report from Sheila Gunn Reid, Rebel News, and I think more people should watch this. This is an excellent report. I think it puts things in very good perspective. I'm going to watch the whole thing.
An ostrich association is pushing for testing and quarantine instead of panic. They're calling for policy grounded in biology, not blind obedience. But in Canada, it seems the government's motto is, when in doubt, kill everything. There's a growing body of science that Canada's overreaching health bureaucrats refuse to acknowledge, and it's coming from south of the border. Veterinary experts in the United States, including the American Ostrich Association, have made it clear ratites, so birds like ostriches, can contract the avian flu, but they don't spread it. They don't migrate, they don't fly, and when infected, they recover with what the association calls minimal zoonotic risk. In plain English, they're not a danger to other birds, animals, or even humans. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid reporting from Universal Ostrich Farm, a small family-run operation here in the Kootenays of British Columbia, fighting a court-ordered depopulation of their farm after exposure to avian flu months ago. To see and support our journalism from on the ground here, visit SaveTheOstriches.com. Now, what I just explained to you is not internet folklore. That's from an official letter sent to U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, urging Washington to finally modernize bird flu policy. In that letter, the association points out that the ostrich's biology and immune response are much more like cattle than poultry, and that the old cull and indemnity model, where governments line up trucks and kill everything with feathers and then compensate the farmers, makes no sense for these long-lived animals. The association reminded Secretary Kennedy that when dairy cattle in the U.S. tested positive for avian flu, the government didn't torch the herds. It used testing and quarantine. The Americans are asking for the same rational approach for ostriches, including these Canadian ones. And here's what they warned. The mandatory culls are an existential threat to small ostrich farms, because when you wipe out birds that take decades to breed, because they can live for 40 years, you're not just killing livestock, you're erasing genetics, livelihoods, and research. Ostriches require a different approach than poultry flocks, which have sometimes an 8-week lifespan. Now, I reached out directly to the American Ostrich Association for their view on what's happening right here in Edgewood, British Columbia. I heard back from the president, Michael Lehman. He told me their association confirmed they're aware of this case and that pressure has been building in the U.S. to raise it with Congress and the Department of Agriculture. He reiterated the organization's position. Ostriches and other ratites are highly resistant to viral transmission and deserves species-specific treatment, not extermination. That science matters because what's unfolding behind me could decide the future of the ostrich industry and animal health policy on both sides of the border. You see behind me are 400 healthy ostriches, alert, active, and apparently virus-free for 260 days. They were exposed to avian flu months ago. They survived. They have never spread it. But instead of learning from that, Ottawa health bureaucrats want these birds dead. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency has ordered their destruction. They've built kill pens nearby, and they're awaiting the courts to clear the way. The farm's owners are clinging to hope, waiting to see if the Supreme Court of Canada will agree to hear their appeal. If that leave isn't granted, the government could move in. And it's not just a farm. These birds, of course, are research animals. They're not for food. They're used in cutting-edge studies on immune response and antibody production related to COVID-19 and other infectious diseases. If they're killed, that research dies with them too. Now, here's the irony that should make every so-called science-based policymaker in Ottawa blush. Around the world, scientists are genetically modifying chickens to make them more athletic, deke the flu virus into binding to fake genetic material so the virus can't reproduce. The result? Those chickens might get infected, but they can't spread the virus. They're literally building lab-made birds that can do what these ostriches already do naturally, contract avian flu and then stop it dead in its tracks. And while scientists in London are tinkering in laboratories to make flu-resistant poultry, the CFIA here in Canada is marching into this farm to destroy 400 naturally flu-resistant ostriches, real-world proof of the same phenomenon. Studies have shown that ostriches produce cross-reactive neutralizing antibodies, immune proteins capable of recognizing multiple flu strains, including pandemic H1N1. Ostriches have been used in antiviral research precisely because their immune systems are that adaptable, generating broad-spectrum protection that even bioengineered chickens can't mimic. So when the Americans say ostriches deserve their own response plan, they're right. Nature already solved a problem that scientists are trying to fix in the lab. The only thing that hasn't evolved is the bureaucracy. If these birds are slaughtered, we won't just lose 400 animals. We'll lose decades of data, unique genetics, and living evidence that mass culls are not the only answer to avian disease. Meanwhile, the American Ostrich Association is pushing for testing and quarantine instead of panic. They're calling for policy grounded in biology, not blind obedience. But in Canada, it seems the government's motto is, when in doubt, kill everything. Now, you can follow this developing story and support our independent reporting right here in Edgewood at SaveTheOstriches.com, because this isn't about disease control anymore. It's about control, period. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid.
Yeah, and great report, Sheila. And would you think the CBC would do that kind of digging into the story? Because they have clearly just completely not only accepted the CFIA and the Liberal government's word on this, they have become active propagandists for the CFIA. And the CFIA no longer has a leg to stand on, an ostrich leg to stand on. This is absolutely foolish policy. And it's based not in science, it's not based in rationale, any sort of rationale that makes sense. It's based on ideology. So here's what's happening right now. And I hope to get Katie on the show tomorrow to talk about this. Because, yeah, they got a reprieve for Thanksgiving. Supreme Court did not come down with a judgment on Friday. And apparently, based on what they're looking at this week, Universal Ostrich Farms has another week without a decision from the Supreme Court. I hope if that decision does come from the Supreme Court, it's going to be one that says, yes, we'll hear the appeal, but that by no means guaranteed. And you know that's by no means guaranteed. But what's happening in the meantime is this. Ostriches are literally disappearing, or what's happening to them? Why are the numbers down? And we've seen a number of people who are on the site say that they're hearing there's fewer ostriches. And I don't know where that's coming from, because the RCMP tried to intervene on behalf of the farm to give them some accurate information about how many ostriches were still extant. And that RCMP member who talked about using a drone to record some footage and then do a bird count was reprimanded by his superior. The RCMP is clearly not in control of this operation. They admit it. The CFIA has the lead, as governments like to talk. But this is very worrisome, because while the ostrich farm says, well, okay, we've got another week here, we can relax. No, you can't relax, because something is happening behind the scenes in secret. It's like the CFIA is conducting an unofficial killing of these birds. They're not going to wait for the Supreme Court to come down. They're going to try to get rid of as many of these birds as they can in the meantime, because they're not accountable to anybody. We know the farm can't feed the birds or even know how many birds are there. The farm's veterinarian tried to determine that last week. He was told he can't do that. And he could not take a blood sample from the bird that was officially dead, spirit. We don't know how many other birds are affected. The CFIA is hiding their activities. They're doing their dirty work in secret. And this is unacceptable, because they were given custody of the birds, and that means to care for the birds. They've also taken over not only the farm, they've taken over Katie's cousin's farm, so they can't even pick the garlic. We talked about this yesterday. What kind of a country have we got now? Well, I'm going to show you this again, because this is the evidence that the CFI is continuing to harass the birds, and when they know they're on film, they hide their activities. Here we go.
What a ridiculous scene. The person appears to have a string in their hand of some sort, or twine.
Yeah.
I don't think it's enough to lasso the bird. They may be giving up.
But we do have evidence that they had a lariat or a lasso in one of these pictures.
Those sunglasses look very sealed up. And then there's another one way down at the far end here.
You want to use this hole?
So, that's where we are with this. I'm looking for another image here, which I want to find for you, because this is very, very significant. You see, he's got the lariat right there. We have a picture of that really illustrates what we're talking about. I just want to download that for you and show you that. No, I haven't got it. Anyway. So, but that's where they're going. I'm going to find that while I show you what's the latest on X here, which is what's happening at the moment. And it's incredible stuff. Just incredible stuff. So that's where we're at with this situation, that they cannot take a break from this. And this is absolutely incredible. We watched this yesterday. This is Katie's cousin. They're not allowed to pick the garlic on their farm. And the CFIA has been, quote, gracious enough, unquote, to allow them access to their house. So they don't have to camp on the God knows where, on the road someplace, or bear the expense of a hotel while this operation continues. This gong show is continuing. Yeah. And this is more evidence of the anarcho-tyranny Canada is living under right now. So no problem if you're selling the drug that starts with F. You can see it right here. I have to be careful saying that word. I love this. Here they go again. It's 2025 and they're still trying to fear monger the public. Look at this. Frankenstein COVID-19 variant is here. Oh, come on. What Canadians need to know? Well, don't take the vaccine. Here's what happened to Kayla Pollock, who was on this show. I wish she had alerted me to this, because I've covered her story quite extensively. But Kayla Pollock was paralyzed for life after COVID-19 shot. Canada offered me medical euthanasia. Medical proof and story linked below. Yeah. This is a woman who was an athlete before COVID. And she's not gotten a cent from the Vaccine Injury Relief Fund. She's got nothing except an invitation to accept medical assistance in dying. I don't know. I have conducted several interviews over the last couple of years with people who tell me, instead of getting an operation, instead of getting medical help, they were offered the MAID program. This country is off the rails. Don't you love this description of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency? Safeguarding food, animals, and plants in Canada. Wow. Are they safeguarding those ostriches right now? No, they're trying to get rid of them all. It's just absolutely incredible. Yeah, and we showed that to you yesterday. And here's She-Wolf replied to my post about the censorship agenda. This is quite interesting. Bill C2 is surveillance. Okay. Bill C8 is the infrastructure bill. Bill C9, speech and ideology. That's the hate symbols. Bill C11, internet and media. And I think she's guessing about Bill C63. That was the Online Harms Act under Justin Trudeau. But this, of course, I think it's going to be called the Online Safety Act. They're going to rename it like they have in the UK. And it will probably be about Bill C15, Bill C16. It's coming down the pike before Christmas. And here we are, Thanksgiving weekend. You know, these people don't like to work very hard in the House of Commons. They'll be leaving probably mid-December. So we have literally 2 months, and you can bet they've already promised to introduce the Online Harms Act in its next transformation. Way to go, Katie, on Talk Radio, WABC. Now, let's listen to this. Let's listen to this.
The concern was that there was birds missing. Now, I had heard this before, and I'd seen that there was definitely a lack of birds up in the front pens, but we just attributed that to them feeding them all at the back where the hay bales are, so that they can get them nice and close to the killing pens. Made sense. But since then, there's been a whole bunch of camera footage and different things that are showing that there is a distinct lack of birds. Okay? From all accounts, they can't account for at least 50 of them. Now, I don't know. Okay, because the concern was that there was birds missing. Now, I had heard this before, and I'd seen that there was definitely a lack of birds up in the front pens, but we just attributed that to them feeding them all at the back where the hay bales are, so that they can get them nice and close to the killing pens. Made sense. But since then, there's been a whole bunch of camera footage and different things that are showing that there is a distinct lack of birds. Okay, from all counts, they can't account for at least 50 of them.
Yeah, I wanted to play that again because 50. So this is what we're hearing. Oh, and here's this picture. There's the lasso right there. And as soon as this CFIA agent, whatever the hell he wants to call himself, sees he's being videotaped, he hides the lasso. So what are they up to? Well, obviously not anything very good. And I believe that they're culling the birds right now. And they're doing it through underhanded means. And they're doing everything they can to not comply. Because they think they're right, even though the world increasingly is against them. And the United States now is not lined up with their stupid stamping out policy, which is irrational and crazy. And thanks for watching my broadcast this week about the CRA trying to use the back door to go after your home equity. And I'm going to keep on this story throughout the week. We've got some ideas brewing about how to handle this, but we cannot wait for the Supreme Court to come back. We need to charge the CFIA and to get them off the property. They are occupying a private farm, and there's no justification for this when they are carrying on in the way they're doing, in a way that is mistreating the animals and demonstrating outright cruelty to the animals. We have seen that, and they have gagged and bound this family of farmers from doing anything to save their birds or to advance their cause. And once again, a shout out to Clearway Car Rental in Abbotsford that canceled their contract with the CFIA. Keep going. Call on the Save on Fence Rentals and Hay Bale Company. Do not cooperate. Do not comply. Happy Thanksgiving. You have to shake your head, because there is literally a shortage of hay in this area because the CFIA has taken so much of it for its killing pens. It's absolutely astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. Anyway, as I said, I'll be talking to Katie later today. We've got some things to discuss, but hope to get her on the show again tomorrow. And like I say, though, I'll be back in a minute. I've got to show the merchandise ad. I've been neglecting it all week, and I've got to show that too. But I've got more to say when I get back about this. Yeah, weak men make hard times. I encourage you to have a look at the stickers. We've got some great new stickers there. And I've been remiss not to show some of those to you. But here we are, folks. It's Thanksgiving Monday. And like I said, I'm going to get on the line after this broadcast with a lot of my collaborators, Jason Levine, Nico, who I do the show with on Wednesdays. We do the Conservative Corner together. And some other other journalists who have been doing a fantastic job on this subject. We need more journalists, not less. And this is why if journalists aren't covering the story, okay, I've called you out. I'm not going to say anything more about it. It's your decision. If you don't think this is a newsworthy story, that's up to you. I've been a journalist, or I've worked with journalists, or I've worked in public affairs for the last 30 years. And I think I know what a good news story is. And I think I know what is not just a news story, it's fundamental to how this country works. And this country is not working. And this ostrich story is important for all of us because, as I've said dozens of times, it's not just about ostriches. It's about private property. It's about for farmers to own livestock and not have it killed, not have it destroyed, not have it taken from them. And it's about people being able to access their house. When the CFIA says they can't go there. So I'm going to be on the phone with the people who I've been working with, other journalists who understand the story, understand it's about fundamental, foundational freedoms in this country that we're losing. The Carney government is waging war against farmers. The Trudeau government waged war against farmers. I don't know how many times I heard that from former Ag Minister Jerry Ritz, a good friend who was on this program a couple of times. And I'm going to have Jerry back on to talk about the state of agriculture today. But the Trudeau government and the Carney government have waged and are waging war against agriculture, against farmers in this country. And we are all going to suffer for that. It's completely unacceptable. The Carney government is in the midst of a gun grab. And who is affected most by that? Farmers, not the criminals on the streets of Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. The farmers who are in the interior of BC, Alberta, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, yes, even Quebec. Yeah. The only reason the Liberal government is advancing the gun grab is to appease Liberal votes in Quebec. The public safety minister admitted that. Most public safety ministers would have the gumption, the balls, the moxie to admit that they really screwed up and resign. Not in this Carney government. The Carney government, as we've said, is waging war against free speech. It's a massive surveillance government, and it wants to shut down your right to free speech. We're going to keep fighting that in every way we know how. So I'll be back again tomorrow. I'll be interviewing Alberta Premier Daniel Smith in the afternoon. I can't decide whether or not that's going to be an afternoon show or I'm going to hold that till, goodness gracious, Wednesday morning. Might have to do that. But I'm going to be asking Danielle about the pipeline, about her efforts to get pornography out of elementary schools, the attacks she's had from sickos who don't want her to do that, and her recent comments about Donald Trump not getting involved in the Alberta independence movement. So we've got at least 20 minutes with Danielle. It's going to be fascinating. So that's either going to be on tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, or Wednesday morning. And I'm going to be talking to Katie to get her on the show as well, either tomorrow or Wednesday. And I think we need to keep fighting. We need to keep fighting. Thank you for watching today. It's been a pleasure. Happy Thanksgiving. Again, enjoy the rest of your day. We're having a turkey today. And thank you for your support. God bless you and God bless